Welcome to SpectraCell's Thursday night webinar program. Tonight we bring you micronutrient effects on the brain, mitochondria, and sleep, presented by Dr. Jose Colon. Resource materials are available on the resource list on the left of your screen. At this time, I would like to welcome Dr. Colon.
Hi, thank you all for joining us. There's a lot of things that you could be doing on Thursday night, and I'm very happy that you're able to join us on this webinar. For a lot of people, this may be the first time that we're hearing this talk. This is actually kind of like a continuation of the first talk that we had of sleep and wellness. However, this is a separate subject, but the two complement each other very well. So by all means, go back and take a look at the first one of sleep and wellness. Going on to that, this is more energy and wellness, micronutrients effects on the brain, mitochondria, and sleep. As far as my background, I am a neurologist with special qualifications in child neurology, and these days what I do is sleep medicine on a full-time basis, both on the outpatient and see both adults and children. And I'd like to talk about how I incorporate nutrition into my program. So sleep is one of those things that more has been learned about sleep in the past 60 years than the preceding 6,000. I believe that to be true. Now, one of the things that we're finding is that even though we're in this information age, we're still finding a lot of associations. So there's no doubt that sleep is associated with fatigue, cognitive concerns, immunity, metabolic syndromes, and inflammation, right? And our first talk on sleep and wellness, we outlined the functional medicine matrix and showed how sleep affects all aspects of the matrix and how other aspects can affect sleep as well. There's no doubt that there's association between sleep and cardiac disease. When patients die in the middle of the night, how do they do that? It's because of a sleep apnea that may be untreated, and we talked about that in the first one. And there's no doubt that when I treat someone's sleep apnea, their blood pressure comes down by 10 points. But sometimes I do have patients that I treat with their sleep apnea and their blood pressure still may be high. Sleep and headaches are medical effects of sleep disorders is something that we definitely note there. Sleep and headaches. There's no doubt that there's an interrelation between sleep and headaches. And as a neurologist, I get a lot of patients sent to me for headaches, and they want to rule out sleep disorders, and many times we find that and we fix it. Other times, as I mentioned, we do get, eradicate their sleep apnea and get that treated, but sometimes they can continue with headaches, which caused me to learn a little bit more about underlying root causes. And sleep does not waste time. It's good for the waistline. And we know that evidence-based medicine, that sleep and weight are intertwined. Insomnia and psychiatric disorders, there's a clear association here, and it's bidirectional. One can cause and contribute to the other. Poor sleep leads to mood disorders and vice versa. And then neurocognitive effects of sleep. There's no doubt, and this is not my soapbox, but actually the NIH saying that if you're sleep deprived, you can have some problems with attention, and this is true in adults and children as well. And there are clear associations between sleep disorders and neurodegenerative disorders. Tauopathies such as Alzheimer's have circadian disturbances, and Parkinson's disease has REM behavior disorder associated 10 years before the onset of Parkinson's. So this is common knowledge, right? Now, one of the things in the medical community in general, how long does it take before science finds something for it to be implemented? And RBD, REM behavior disorder, is a classic example. We talked about RBD in our first talk in sleep and wellness, but REM behavior disorder became recognized in the 1980s, but it wasn't put into the classification of sleep disorders until 1990. That's a 10-year lag. But even then, in 1950, there was an animated animated movie, Cinderella. They saw Bruno acting out his dreams, and it wasn't until a couple of years ago that a Spanish neurologist was watching Cinderella with his daughter, and you realize that was Bruno. The dog was doing some RVD behaviors. So sometimes it takes a long time for that science to be put into clinical practice. And that's not even the moral of the story of what I say Cinderella. You know, I have a little daughter, and she loves princesses, and she loves Cinderella. And I taught her really early on that the moral of the story of Cinderella is that nothing positive happens after midnight. Now, all of these things that we just talked about between sleep and different disorders, yeah, there are associations, but you know, sometimes we need to separate associations versus causes. You know, and a classic example that I can give you is that I can show you evidence that when there's increased shark attacks, that ice cream sales are higher. So it's not that people are aspirating on ice cream in the water and then a shark eats them. What happens is that there's something going on that's related to both. There's underlying root causes, and what happens is that ice cream sales are high when it's hotter, and the temperatures are warmer when it's hotter, so people are more likely to be at the beach. So there's a difference between association and causes there. So now we talked about certain associations. Now when we want to take a look at root causes, let's talk about the mitochondria. So the objectives of what we have today is that we're going to understand the role of the mitochondria for protection of energy. We're going to discuss links between mitochondrial damage in the brain. We're going to discuss disorders of chronic disease that overlap sleep and identify links between sleep and nutrition. And we're going to review ways to support mitochondria with our diet and phytonutrients and identify the modality of measuring micronutrient status. Now, one of the things that I do need to point out is that when I give talks, I do give a lot of information, and do not feel obliged to read a whole slide at one time. You can contact me. I'll give my contact information at the end of this talk, and if you want a copy of all of my references, I'll be happy to provide them for you, okay? Out of scope, we're not going to talk about energy medicine. Even though this is an energy and wellness talk, energy medicine is out of the scope of this, and we're not really going to focus on primary mitochondrial disorder, but rather secondary mitochondrial dysfunction. And mindfulness-based stress reduction is going to be a different talk for a different day. Now, I will do my best to stay on topic, okay? I am a sleep disorders specialist. That's what I do in both adults and kids. I'm not going to go out of my realm of expertise, okay? So, disclosures, I don't receive any fundings through pharmaceutical. I'm employed by Lee Health, and as I mentioned, I am an author and have a website that provides sleep health information, and let's roll. So let's just talk basic biology. Our body is composed of cells, and within cells lie mitochondria. And this mighty mitochondria is the powerhouse of our biology there. And mitochondria are proposed to have origins from bacteria, and they contain DNA that is distinct from nuclear DNA. And these mitochondrial genes related to proteobacteria, they're inherited through our mother. So the mitochondrial's major function is ATP synthesis, and we make energy that way. So we take in nutrients, and mitochondria consume about 90% of the oxygen used by our body for oxidative phosphorylation. Now, oxidative stress causes mitochondrial damage to the structure and its function. And when it comes to mitochondria, okay, it can, because every single cell in our body has mitochondria, every organ system can be affected. However, the brain is uniquely vulnerable because it is such a highly metabolic organ. and damaged mitochondria lead to damaged brain. And this is what got me interested in this subject, because I see patients for sleep disorders because they don't feel well, and it's gratifying to fix someone's sleep apnea or to identify a narcolepsy. However, sometimes their sleep studies are negative for sleep apnea, and they're still fatigued. Sometimes we've treated narcolepsy to a certain point with medications, but they're still fatigued. So what got me onto this quest is this quest for underlying root causes. So let's go back to just basic science. Your mighty mitochondria is your energy engine, and it takes in macronutrients, carbohydrates, fatty acids, amino acids, and we get energy. Huzzah, just like that. So just like a car has an engine, our cells have mitochondria. And let's take a microscope and look into the walls of these mighty mitochondria. And as you do that, you see that electron transport chain. You're just trying to make ATP. But in order to make ATP, you need nutrients, okay? So just like a car has an engine, you can put your foot down on that gas pedal as hard as you want. If you don't have motor oil, you don't have gasoline, you don't have brake fluid, your car ain't going to run. Well, for your mitochondria to run, you need nutrients, okay? We need riboflavin. And foods that are particularly rich in riboflavin include green vegetables, eggs, and lean meats. All right, we need niacin. And sources of niacin include fruits and vegetables, starchy vegetables such as sweet potato and yellow corn. You need vitamin K, all right? So sources of vitamin K are dark leafy greens. You need vitamin C, such as cantaloupe, kiwi, citrus. We need magnesium from dark leafy greens, nuts, seeds, fish, beans, whole grains, and avocados. We need lipoic acid. Sources of lipoic acid include spinach, broccoli, yams, potato, yeast, Brussels sprouts. I love Brussels sprouts. Now, if you take Brussels sprouts and you just steam them, they're kind of mushy. But if you cut them in half, you put a little bit of olive oil on them, bake them in the oven, coño, delicious. Carnitine, okay? Sources of carnitine can include red meat, lean pork, poultry, and strict vegetarians can find themselves deficient in carnitine. And I'm not saying anything about negative about vegetarian. It's just a fact that was taught to me by one of the teachers of the Mito food plan that actually happens to be a vegetarian herself. We need fatty acids, all right? There is negative publicity about the connotation around consuming fat. However, our brain is made out of fat, okay? If we did not have fat in our brain, then the only thing that you would have the capacity to do is to run for public office. So sources of fat include flax, walnuts, almonds, dark leafy greens as well, and we gotta love olive oil as well. We need coenzyme Q10. Sources of coenzyme Q10 include fish, meats, and sesame seeds. Now, one of the problems is if the source of sesame seeds is through the standard American diet, that's a problem. Okay, this meal is calorie dense, but it is nutritionally depleted of vitamins and minerals, and your brain and mitochondria need that for proper support. So the standard American diet is an oasis of macronutrients, but man, it is a desert of micronutrients. Further, the fats that are in there are higher on the omega-6 pro-inflammatory side. So, in reality, we have many sources of toxicity to our mitochondria. And remember, every cell has mitochondria, hence every organ has mitochondria. Hence, mitochondrial disease can manifest itself with multiple organ system dysfunction. And the brain is uniquely vulnerable to oxidative damage. There are many mechanisms by which there's not enough time to go on. This is going to require an entire symposium in itself. Reactive oxygen species affect your mitochondria. An individual produces about 1 kilogram of oxygen radicals per year, and the consequence of this is about 100,000 oxidative attacks on mitochondrial DNA per day. So how does this present neurocognitively? Ultimately as neurodegeneration. And if you remember, neurodegeneration doesn't happen overnight. It commonly precedes itself by years, if not decades, of soft signs such as depression, headaches, fatigue. And what are all of these associated with? They're associated with sleep problems as well. That's what got me interested in this. And you could just see the face of fatigue when mitochondria are damaged, and the opposite. When people are supporting their mitochondria, they have a vitality to them that you can even see that they look younger afterwards. Now, if you want to age fast, all you have to do is smoke the mitochondria out of you. And I'm not judging, but this is a fact that many people don't realize. They think that tobacco affects your lungs. No, it affects all of your body. And then there's a lot of different environmental toxins such as pesticides, herbicides, bisphenols that found in plastics. We have in our house kind of like a no shoes in the house policy, not because we're neat freaks, but because, look, I go out in the morning and I see a weed on my driveway. I come back and it's not there. What happened? The people who run our association, they put herbicides on there. So you got to be careful what you're bringing into your house. And we talked about the plastics there. And then there's number of different medications that can be mitochondrial toxic as well. So there was a time that I used to view, okay, I treated your sleep apnea and you're still tired. You need Provigil. Well, Provigil can be helpful, but it's, residual sleepiness from a treated sleep apnea is not a Provigil deficiency. It's a cause to take a look at all of your medications and see. So again, within the references, I can provide this for you, but there's a number of different medications that can cause mitochondrial toxicity leading to fatigue. And I had a patient with HIV complaining of fatigue, and I said, all right, well, you're negative for sleep apnea, but your antiretrovirals can be mitochondrial toxic. And I'm not telling them to come off of that. No, they need it. So what can we do? We can support our mitochondria with proper nutrition and proper supplementation. This is where micronutrient testing comes around. And this is actually provided by SpectraCell, this copy over here. So you can reach out to that and get a list of different medications and what nutrients we can support. So mitochondrial dysfunction in diet, calorie excess, processed foods that are high in fructose corn syrup, diets that are high in inflammatory fats and hyperglycemia are all toxic to our mitochondria. Obesity and diabetes combined together, what Dr. Mark Hyman calls as diabesity, this impairs your mitochondria even further. Look at that. When it comes to weight management, there's also micronutrients that we need for weight management. And then you have sarcopenia. So it's not just obesity related, okay? There are people that are skinny fat. So there's a loss of marbling there's a loss of muscle that you get with marbling of fat within the wall. And we've seen this, people who eat bad and don't exercise, but, they don't appear to be obese. However, they have mitochondrial dysfunction because they're in the process of developing insulin resistance there. Insulin resistance happens to be the perfect storm for mitochondrial dysfunction through many different mechanisms. And lo and behold, when it comes to diabetes care and diabetes management, there are some micronutrients that affect diabetes as well. So on this continent, this is a typical continental breakfast, high in refined carbohydrates and sugar. However, you can call this continental breakfast pre-diabetes. That's something that you can call it. And a lot of people don't want to see this. A lot of people don't want to hear it. See no evil, hear no evil. A lot of people really want to forget that they even saw any of this. And a lot of them will when they develop type 3 diabetes. So having diabetes increases your Alzheimer's risk. Now, the notion that food damages the brain, that only happens to adults, right? Being a little cantankerous. No, that happens in kids as well, to the point that we're seeing increased obesity epidemics paralleling increased ADHD epidemics, to the point where even psychiatrists are recommending, listen, if you have an obese kid, you need to screen them for ADHD because that's how interrelated they are. And this is depressing. You know, it's pretty depressing. Even psychiatrists are picking up on this and saying, hey, maybe we should recall depressive symptoms, metabolic syndrome type 2. Now you're saying, Cologne, you're a sleep specialist. You're starting to get off topic when you talk about depression and nutrition. Actually, I'm not going off topic because insomnia and psychiatric disorders are interrelated. Sleep disturbances more strongly associated with psychiatric disorders than any other medical illness. And definitely what I was talking about, there are neurocognitive effects of sleep disorders as well. We discussed that, and there could be adverse daytime effects as well. And sleep and neurodegenerative disorders very commonly are interrelated, because insomnia commonly predates Alzheimer's disease, sometimes by a decade. They have circadian rhythm disorders. And then sleep disorders commonly predate Parkinson's disease. Sleep disturbances are among the most common non-motor complaints of patients with Parkinson's disease, and this really impacts quality of life. And then you have dementia. Now, the earliest signs of dementia are depression and apathy, no motivation, desire. You know, there's times that I feel like that's a lot of the people that I have in my sleep clinic. So when I see that, I kind of keep this slide in mind. The thing is, once you've developed a formal diagnosis of Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, you know, I mean, that's mostly it. It's hard to reverse those things. That's a poor prognosis. However, early symptoms such as depression, brain-based fatigue, you still have some good prognosis for recovery. So I keep this picture in my mind when I'm seeing a patient with fatigue or REM behavior disorder symptoms or circadian disturbances, because you don't just wake up and have Alzheimer's one day. No, it's a process. First, there's different stages: forgetting to locate objects, then forgetting what you just read, then you start to forget, recall recent events. And it's not until stage 5 that you get diagnosed with mid-stage Alzheimer's disease. So where are some of our patients on this scale? Where are some of us on this scale? Dementia prevention. How can we cut down all of this inflammation and reduce dementia? Food is medicine, phytonutrients. So naturally occurring phytocompounds may potentially hinder neurodegeneration and improve memory and cognition. Blueberry, mulberry, strawberry, pomegranate, grapeseed, papaya, apple, green tea, coffee, walnuts, saffron, curcumin, pepper, all of these things can help reduce dementia. To the point where there is the MEN protocol. You can go ahead and look this up. It's a very strict lifestyle change. It's a lifestyle program that combines botanicals and nutraceuticals, diet, exercise, and has had some pretty good early evidence of being able to reverse the mild cognitive impairment. Then there's headaches, okay? Headaches are common, all right? 28 million migraineurs. That's a lot, age 12 and up. And then there's a 3-to-1 ratio of women to men. Now, this statistically really proves that men give women headaches, right? These are just stats, though. People don't relate to stats. You know what they do relate to? They relate to money. And headaches can cause $2.5 billion a year in direct costs and another $13 billion in indirect costs when you're talking about absenteeism and reduced work productivity. And what we find when you're looking under underlying root causes, there's comorbidities with migraine. And this is suggestive of a link between mitochondrial dysfunction. And then there's headache and nutrition. There's a lot of data, both adult and pediatric literature, about nutrition and headaches. And lo and behold, that's one of the things that we can use micronutrient testing for, is to find different nutritional deficiencies that may be associated with headaches. And then there's fibromyalgia. You know, what disorder affects more of your body than fibromyalgia? And I see a ton of patients with fibromyalgia that come into my sleep clinic. And mitochondrial dysfunction has been shown to be associated with fibromyalgia. And we're seeing it younger and younger. Now, one thing is that I do have a colleague of mine and a nutritionist, a colleague that's a physical medicine doctor and nutritionist that we're all going through Institute for Functional Medicine together. And we've really been able to reverse a lot of these juvenile fibromyalgia symptoms when we find, you know, the right committed family. Lo and behold, once again, fibromyalgia, you can find a number of different nutrient deficiencies, and this is another disorder that micronutrient testing can be very, very helpful. Chronic fatigue syndrome, I'm not going to go through the criteria there for chronic fatigue syndrome. What I want to show you is that there's a lot of evidence that there's interrelated mitochondrial dysfunction. Once again, if you want a copy of these references, you could just reach out to me at the end. Fatigue. Fatigue is the primary residual symptom in an SSRI-treated healthy depressed patient. I've had many patients, negative for sleep apnea, negative for narcolepsy, but you look at them and you can see that they're exhausted. And I'm not going to say, no, it's, you know, actually the way that I was trained was to say, okay, we've ruled out organic, so now it's psychiatric. Well, it could be micronutrient as well. And micronutrient testing can help find a number of different deficiencies that can be contributing to fatigue. So there's this overlap between fatigue and depression, very big overlap. And depression is the defining disorder of our time. Heart disease and cancer are going to kill more Americans, but depression has become the most disabling non-fatal condition in the United States and around the world, okay? This is a real problem, folks. 1 out of every 10 Americans report depression. 16 to 18 million people, some degree of dysanidonia. Here's your menu. All right, this is your menu on how to treat depression. Why is it that the majority of people that are treated with depression need to be on more than one drug or have to try a different medication or have to try a different therapy? Maybe it's because we're not getting to underlying root causes. And an example of root causes can be micronutrient deficiencies. This can make an entire topic of a webinar in itself. Other underlying root conditions are inflammation. And it's known that when you have an inflammatory disorder, that you can have more depression symptoms and vice versa. Patients with depression have higher inflammatory markers. All right, Cologne, you're off topic, all right? You're a sleep specialist, and you're talking about inflammation and depression. No, I'm not off topic because inflammation and sleep are interrelated as well. It is very well known that patients with inflammatory disorders have higher sleep disorders. Patients being treated with inflammatory medications can have sleep disturbances. And I talked in my first talk on how sleep deprivation can cause inflammation as well. And on the topic here, inflammation can also be mediated by micronutrient deficiencies as well. So psychiatric disorders such as schizophrenia, Alzheimer's, autism, ADHD, inflammation, oxidative stress, poor nutrition, all of these affect your mitochondria, okay? And there are micronutrient deficiencies that we can find in autism, micronutrient deficiencies that we can find in ADHD as well. And that is a topic that's already been covered on a previous SpectraCell webinar that I would encourage you all to view. So why do these syndromes overlap so much? Maybe it's because every cell in your body has mitochondria. Hence, they all overlap. So I give this talk and people are like, okay, what can I do for my mitochondria? Well, antioxidants, glutathione, coenzyme Q10, vitamins, minerals, cofactors, eat your vegetables. Bam! Do we see how food is medicine? A little bit of color, a little bit of a lot of colors is better than just a lot of just one thing. Another question that I commonly get is eating organic important? Well, one of the things that's important to know is that when a plant is stressed, okay, when they're trying to fend their way, they make more of those phytochemicals, because those phytochemicals are actually bitter to bugs. So if a plant is growing with pesticides and herbicides and they're growing larger and they're not stressed, they're not making as much phytonutrients. So I'm not telling you to stress your plants and to yell at them, but whenever you can eat organic and eat local, the better. So other things that we could do for our mitochondria. Turmeric is anti-inflammatory and mitochondrial protectant. Sulforaphane is in cruciferous vegetables and improves mitochondrial function. Man, seriously, people are making broccoli caps. I mean, for Christ's sake, just eat your broccoli. All of these phytonutrients in your fruits and vegetables, polyphenols, can help prevent neurodegenerative diseases, okay? Also, there's healthy fats. Remember, our brain is made out of fat. So healthy fats make up the mitochondrial membrane, and they regenerate the membrane and assist with fluidity. Now, the problem is that the standard American diet is deficient in these vitamins, minerals, and phytochemicals. It's funny, sometimes I give this talk and people are like at a conference and they're like, okay, what's Cologne going to eat for lunch? You know, they're sitting there watching. But it's not just a standard American diet, okay? I am Hispanic, and my Hispanic diet is extremely high glycemic. You know, so we're at higher risk for Alzheimer's disease. So it's not all about genetics, but sometimes it's about diabetics. Now, when I talk to the public about this, I tell them, listen, I am not trying to make anyone feel uncomfortable, all right? If I were trying to make you feel uncomfortable, I would talk like this guy. Nutrition is the new controversy. It used to be that you never go to a party and talk politics. People don't talk politics anymore, but now nutrition seems to be like, okay, don't tell me what to eat or what not to eat. So before I move any further, I want to kind of defuse some of the controversies, and let's talk about something less controversial, all right? Let's talk about ethnicity. Let's talk about, people are always like, okay, this is the new controversy, but let's talk about something less controversial than nutrition. Let's talk about ethnicity and race, okay? That is so much less controversial than talking about nutrition. So when you see these two girls, you may see some differences, but I see some similarities, and let me walk you through that. So my daughter on the right-hand side, she's part Puerto Rican and part Chinese, and thank God she looks like her mother. My niece on the other side is part Puerto Rican and part Jamaican. So here you can see some striking resemblances, and the resemblance is that they're both American. So my point is, sometimes let's not always focus on differences, but let's take a look at what is similar. So now let's take a look at this new controversy again. You know, should we be vegan? Should we be paleo? You know, gluten-free Mediterranean diet. This is not a controversy, okay? Let's take the controversy away. We can work together to make a more heart-healthy and brain-healthy diet, all right? If we are lowering our glycemic index, and we are eating real food, whole, fresh foods, 6 to 8 servings of veggies and fruits per day, we are improving our health. So we need to just eat real food. Cologne, you're off topic again. You're a sleep medicine specialist and you're telling people how to eat. No, I'm not off topic, because sleep and weight are completely interrelated. Okay, so it's important for me to discuss this. And sleep loss equals weight gain. One of the mechanisms is by decreased REM sleep. So we talked in our sleep and wellness talk how we have these different cycles, and how REM sleep is a very highly metabolic activity. And if you're sleeping less, you're getting less REM sleep, so you're burning less calories. Also, your hormones are altered. If you have sleep disturbances, you end up with increased cortisol, decreased insulin sensitivity. You have alterations with reduced leptin and elevated ghrelin. And then you have increased snacking. So what is this? This is evidence-based medicine that says that if you're sleeping less, you're eating more carbs. That if you're sleeping less, you're having more sugary snacks. What is the, and if you're not sleeping, guess what? People aren't eating salads, all right? So what does this tell you? that there's a subset of people that have insomnia. And as I mentioned, they're not fixing themselves salads, but they're rather eating packaged foods that is very, very high in sugar. So sugar is made up of glucose and fructose. Now, glucose, your body can metabolize it, 90% of your body. However, fructose, mandatory, must go through your liver. Your liver, isn't that where crap goes through? Yes. And then as it gets metabolized, it forms VLDL. What is that? Cholesterol. Yeah. So fatty liver disease is about to overcome that of hepatitis for liver transplants. That's a real problem. And foie gras means fat liver in French. What do they feed these ducks in order to make that fatty liver? They feed them a lot of grains and high glycemic grains in particular. Now, sugar then has these other types of metabolic pathways that as you increase, you have more VLDL, you end up with high cholesterol, you end up on a statin, okay? And statin is one of the mitochondrial toxic drugs. I'm not saying that there's no role for them. I'm saying, hey, what's the underlying root cause? And they do have side effects, okay? And then when you end up on a statin, there's pathways that they decrease your testosterone. Now, this guy has been snoring for 20 years. Why is he seeing me all of a sudden? It's because he has low energy, because we're on a mitochondrial affecting medication on a statin, and now we have less testosterone, and now all of a sudden they want to get their snoring taken care of. And then the sugar gets metabolized and increases uric acid, which is a mitochondrial toxic as well. And when you increase your uric acid, you disrupt your nitric oxide. When you disrupt your nitric oxide, you end up with high blood pressure. And some people say that if you have high blood pressure that you should reduce your salt intake, but it's the other white crystal, sugar, that you need to reduce as well, equally. Cologne, you're off topic. All right, you're a sleep disorder specialist, and you're talking about eating sugar, getting high blood pressure? No, I'm not off topic, because when you have high blood pressure, you may end up on a beta blocker, like a lot of my patients, and beta blockers directly decrease melatonin release. Now, is this a side effect, or is this a direct effect? And then you end up with insulin resistance. Insulin resistance causes mitochondrial dysfunction, as we've been talking this entire talk. That insulin resistance, you end up on metformin. Metformin further puts you on a mitochondrial toxin drug there and leaves you more fatigued. And then sometimes we end up with obesity, and we end up with obstructive sleep apnea. Now, I take care of patients, and I reverse their sleepiness when we treat their sleep apnea. But then there's another portion that say, but doc, I'm still tired. Why am I still tired? Yeah, well, I've gone over your meds, and you're on like 4 or 5 different mitochondrial toxic drugs. And this gets worse, folks. This high sugar intake has different patterns and pathways to where we end up with tumor cell proliferation, and we end up with more cancer, of which they end up with fatigue, and we're seeing them for sleep disorders as well. Folks, food is calories, food is connection, food is also culture. And you have to understand that when you're asking people to change their lives, you're asking them to change their lives. You're asking them to cook. You got to be trying to meet them with where they're ready. I'll have patients say, you want me to reduce my pasta? I'm Italian. Forget about it. I'm supposed to eat pasta. Are you Italian or are you Italian-American? Because I've been to Italy, and the portions of pasta are pretty small, and the amount of veggies on every plate is robust. And when you eat meat, it's not any bigger than the size of your fist. We've also learned today that food is medicine, okay? And this is important to know. So one of the things that I've incorporated into my sleep medicine practice is the Mito food plan. And the Mito food plan is a very low glycemic, high in the phytonutrient spectrum, 20% of your calories from protein, 20% from carbs, mostly above the ground plants, and the other 60% from fat. And I love this quote by Terry Walls. Our fixation on the perfect ratio of macronutrients is misguided. Instead, we should be fixed on how to maximize the vitamins, minerals, and antioxidant status from food. Very well said. So let's take a look at some components of the Mito food plan. All right, almonds. Now, almonds is a monosaturated fat, nice amount of vitamin E. This can help reduce free radical accumulation. Glutathione is an important antioxidant, and mitochondria have intracellular calcium as well. Avocados, once again, another healthy fat, and remember, our mitochondrial membranes are made out of fat. Mitochondria also have potassium channels. People say, okay, I need potassium. Have a banana. No, avocados have more potassium than bananas. And glutathione, again, mitochondria are the primary intracellular site of oxygen consumption and the major source of reactive oxygen species. So mitochondrial glutathione is a main line of defense for the maintenance of an appropriate redox environment. And then we have beef, okay? Not just beef. Let's say buffalo and grass-fed beef, okay? So listening to a CD by Andrew Weil, he very, very nicely described how our hunter-gatherer predecessors, they didn't eat animals that were very large. They ate small animals, bushmeat, that were running for their lives. So our hunter-gatherers, those meats that they ate were lean. And if you think about it, if you see a wild deer, I mean, they're pretty lean. So we evolved over many, many years with a ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 of 1 to 1. Omega-3 good for our brain, omega-6 is more inflammatory. But the standard American diet with the meats that are antibiotic-filled and pumped with hormones can have a 12 to 1 ratio of omega-6 inflammatory over omega-3. And I've heard quotes of this being actually higher. Blueberries. Rich in phytonutrients, they improve blood flow to the brain and they protect the neurons from free radical damage. Been shown to help with memory and cognition. Broccoli. I love me some broccoli. If you ever hear Dr. Reginald Roundtree, oh my God, he goes off about broccoli. Loves it. Sulforaphane activates NRF2. What's NRF2? NRF2 is a basic leucine citrate that regulates the expression of antioxidant proteins that protect against oxidative damage triggered by injury and inflammation. Okay? They also increase glutathione, something that we've been talking about there. Coconut oil, man, this is controversial. Now, the American Heart Association, they have come out and they have made their statement. Okay? I think that it is important to know what their guidelines are, know what their statements are, and if you're going to put a patient on coconut oil, that you need to be monitoring pre and post biomarkers. Now, what you'll find is in a low carbohydrate diet, their biomarkers have a tendency to improve. Some of the studies that they talked about with coconut oil, yes, it increases your cholesterol when you make coconut cake. Well, is it the coconut oil or is it the coconut cake that's doing it? So coconut oil has received bad press because it's a saturated fat, but not all fats are equal. This is a medium chain fat. Coconut oil supports your mitochondria, which is your energy generator. Interestingly, there was a group of farmers that wanted to fatten up their cows, so they're like, let's give them coconut oil. Well, you know what? Those cows lost weight. Why? Because you put them in ketosis. That's why. So coconut oil has been found to provide benefit to the brain from ADHD and Alzheimer's. Anytime that you're using, coconut oil or something, cite your references and just make sure that you know your literature and also monitor biomarkers. Green tea is high in EGCG, which appears to have powerful antioxidant effects against free radicals. Neuroprotective, activates NRF2, great for your mitochondria. Olive oil. So olive oil, high in polyphenols, it's anti-inflammatory. Whenever I go to a restaurant, let's say if I go to a pub, instead of French fries, I say, listen, can I have some broccoli? And I ask for some olive oil, and I pour that over. One of my favorite things there. Pomegranate, palm wonderful, right? So they're high in antioxidants. They're anti-inflammatory. they're actually low glycemic because of the seeds. They're such high in fiber, and they're good for your liver as well. So one thing that you can do is you can sprinkle a little bit of pomegranate juice with club soda. And I do more club soda than pomegranate juice. You got to be careful how much juice you're taking in because you don't want to take in too much sugar. But this is, in our house, what we call soda juice. So instead of giving a Coke or a Diet Coke or whatever, we'll have a little bit of soda juice. And my kids have this, and they enjoy it. And this is also something that I'll have on Sundays, so that I don't, the cold ones that I put down are more pomegranate and club soda and less of the liquid carb there from beer while you watch football, right? So wild Alaskan salmon, high in DHA and omega-3, high in carotenoids. Carotenoids and ubiquinones cooperate as redox participants in an anti-radical reaction and in helping to maintain membrane stabilization during times of high energy demand. So this is important. It's a great source of coenzyme Q10 as well. So this is my, in case of emergency, break glass meal, where I will keep cans of wild-caught salmon, and if I forgot to pack a lunch or something, I have a Publix next door that sometimes I'll get arugula or watercress, and I'll just put my salmon over that, my emergency meal. Seaweed, high in minerals for mitochondria. Yes, high in selenium and magnesium, 10 times that of other vegetables. Good for your mitochondria. So these dry seaweed snacks are so much better for you than chips during a football game or at a party. Also, you can use some of the dry seaweed, that you can put that into a broth instead of gluten noodles. And then there's spinach, so spinach is high in antioxidants. It helps improve memory, high in carotenoids. Flavonoids are anti-inflammatory, and they have antioxidant protection as well. There was this day that I was trying to get my kid when he was younger to eat his spinach, and I go, young man, you got to eat your spinach so you can be like Popeye. And he looks at me and he goes, who? I was like, all right, come here, I'm going to fix this. So I brought him onto the computer, and I brought him onto YouTube and showed him some old Popeye films, and I go, oh, what? Do you see what happens when you eat spinach? And he goes, yeah, you fight. Oh, man, that was parenting mistake number too many to count. Anyways, so the Mito food plan is something that I found to be very effective in my practice of sleep medicine. Whoa, you're off topic. You're talking about food plan. How does this relate to sleep? No, I'm not off topic. Protein intake, when it's 20% of your calories, you get the best general sleep scores, okay? And Mito food plan is 20% of your calories from protein. Also, high glycemic diet load has been associated with higher depression symptoms and total mood disturbances and fatigue, okay? That's what my patients are seeing me for, not really for what happens at night. They come to me for what's happening in the daytime, their fatigue. Food is medicine. Fish consumption has found to have a positive effect on the impact of sleep. Sometimes that could be vitamin D related, but also oleic acid related. So oleic acid seems to be especially important for sleep disorders, maybe due to their function as precursors of sleep-inducing oleamine. Isn't that interesting? So Alzheimer's disease is generally associated with lower omega-3 fatty acid from fish as well. Now, I was taught neurodegeneration from Alzheimer's disease occurs at the circadian level. I believe it, but there's no doubt that there's other relations that are going on. This is fascinating information. So, sleep and phytonutrients. Higher daily isoflavin intake was positively associated with optimal sleep duration and quality. This is directly related. Now, I was giving this talk to an administrator, and pointed out this evidence, and they said, yeah, but you're talking about nutrition, but you're referring to nutrition journals. And I really didn't know how to respond to that, but we stand by the evidence here. Lo and behold, when you have certain mitochondrial or micronutrient deficiencies, you have more insomnia as well. So here's a case that I had. Patient had some insomnia and a little bit of fatigue, and lo and behold, we find oleic acid seems to be an especially important factor for sleep disorders. And now I'm seeing a lot of this in my patients that I get micronutrient analysis for insomnia. I'm seeing oleic acid deficiencies because we grew up to be such a fat-phobic nutrition country here. And then there's a low carnitine and asparagine as well, which has been associated with fatigue. So give that information. Here's a different case that I have. This patient had fatigue, polycystic ovarian syndrome, some fatigue with exercise. They were already on a low-carb diet, yet still had polycystic ovarian syndrome. That didn't make sense to me until we got the micronutrient analysis and we found that they had low chromium. Well, that's going to affect fatigue as well. And also she had some low oleic acid, which can be seen in sleep deprivation. And then there was some serine deficiency as well that can affect sports performance. So going through that. And then I had this pediatric patient, that it took the patient some time to fall asleep, and lo and behold, they had some deficiencies, a lot of deficiencies actually, but B3 and B6 are associated with insomnia. Copper is associated as well. Now, this kid had many deficiencies. Why? He was already gluten-free, but his gluten-free consisted of veggie straws, so he wasn't taking in fruits and vegetables, or rather just eating veggie straws all day long. So he wasn't taking in his phytonutrients. You know what? And how you eat can affect your microbiome as well. And it's been shown that high palmitic acid can alter gene clock expression. And I think more studies need to be done on what type of palmitic acid. Is it organic? But we're noticing some correlations here. There's an interplay between the microbiome and the circadian clock. When we're not eating healthy fats, if what we're having is bad fats, that can affect our microbiome. And likewise, when you disrupt your circadian rhythm, you are altering your fecal microbiota as well, your microbiome. And we recognize that these clock genes regulate in all sorts of different cell types. The fundamental bioenergetic process of mitochondrial oxidative phosphorylation, a whole connection of oxidative stress and bioenergetics is coupled to this. So disrupted genes, disrupted mitochondria. So people are like, all right, what else can I do for my mitochondria? Well, the ketogenic diet, conventional wisdom says that mitochondria prefer glucose. However, ketones from fatty acids produce better energy to your brain. So I did have a patient that came to me on a ketogenic diet, and her doctor told her to come off of it, and when she did, she gained weight. There's so many benefits to ketosis. The first notes of the ketogenic diet of using that were back in biblical times, where they would take demon-possessed people and they'd put them out in the desert. They weren't demon-possessed, they had epilepsy. So inducing ketosis can be good for the brain there. Cologne, you're getting off topic. No, I'm not getting off topic. The ketogenic diet improves sleep quality, and that's been seen in children with therapy-resistant epilepsy. Also, when they gave ketogenic diets to patients with cancer, why would you do that? Because cancer cells love sugar. So when you give them ketogenic diets, you improve their cancer outcomes, and they have less insomnia. Plus, you increase deep, slow-wave sleep. Also, ketogenic diets and low glycemic diets have been shown to improve mood. Narcolepsy and ketogenic diets. So I use ketogenic diets and narcolepsy. It's not that I use. Go and look at the evidence in the literature. And there's a lot of patients with narcolepsy that are doing this on their own because they haven't been instructed to do this by their physician. And it's basic science, folks. Narcolepsy is a disorder that you have decreased orexin neurons, okay? Orexin neurons are wake promoting. Well, what turns off orexin neurons? Sugar. High glycemic state turn off orexin neurons. So as I'm saying, this is basic science. So I told this to a physician, and they said, well, but that's not sustainable. Why? Because it's bad for your heart? No, actually, low carbohydrate diets have been shown to improve your overall biomarkers, and this has been studied by cardiologists. All right, so what else can I do for my mitochondria? People want to know. Well, there's a number of different nutrients that can support your mitochondrial function, and this slide is available upon request, so you can have this reference. Cologne, wait a minute, you're a sleep disorder specialist and you're referencing all of these nutrient supports, you're off topic. No, I'm not. Look at this. Melatonin is one of them, okay? Melatonin preserves the integrity of the mitochondria and helps to maintain cell survival. That's fascinating. And it can also be used as potential therapeutic tool for underlying Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. And it's part of complex 1 and complex 4 of your electron transport chain. That is fascinating. You know, to me, when I learned this is like when I learned that there's more planets beyond Pluto, that there's other galaxies. You know, learning that there's more aspects of the electron transport chain. And they've been shown, melatonin use has been shown to be helpful for headaches. And let's remember, food is medicine. We can get melatonin from tart cherry juice, which is also helpful for sleep and decreases inflammation as well. And melatonin can be found in foods, okay? Plant-based foods, including tomatoes, walnuts, barley, strawberry, olive oil, and wine. Let's not forget, food is medicine. So you have this pathway where you take in your tryptophan, you make serotonin, and then you make melatonin. So we make our own melatonin as well. And this was fascinating when I learned that when you give probiotics, that you may be improving their melatonin production. You know, so what? Probiotics? Your gut? More melatonin? Melatonin's in your brain, right? Well, that's like saying serotonin is in your brain. 10% of your body's serotonin is in your brain. The other 90% is in your gut. All right, what else can I do for my mitochondria? Well, exercise. So as I was learning about the Mito food plan, I called up the NIH and I talked to their lead nutritionist that works with mitochondrial disorders, and she said, you know what, your food plan, this is exactly what we're doing. We don't call it the Mito food plan, but this is what we're doing, inducing low glycemic diets. But the other thing that we're doing is that we're having them exercise, because the exercise turns over the bad mitochondria and improves your good mitochondria. Oh, look at that. But there's a correlation there between micronutrient status and exercise. Isn't that fascinating? And then exercises increases BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Exercise is like growth hormone for your brain. Cologne, are you off topic again? No, I'm not off topic, because we talked in the first lecture how regular exercise can improve your sleep by increasing slow wave sleep. Wow, man, I gave you all a lot of information. Why on God's green earth would I give so much information at one time? I'll tell you why. I don't know when in my lifetime I'll ever have the ear of the talent level of the 500 plus people that are listening to this webinar. And I hope that you spread the word around to make it exponential. You have to understand that the definitions that we use for disorders today may not be that of tomorrow, okay? Look at this definition for sleep. Sleep is the intermediate state between wakefulness and death. Wakefulness being regarded as the active state of all the animal intellectual functions, and death as their total suspension. That was from the Anatomy of Drunkenness in 1834. Listen, we have to understand that when we see a disorder in our field, what we are seeing is the tip of the iceberg. And even in my field, the textbook will tell you insomnia may be best viewed as a symptom rather than a disease process, as it often accompanies another disorder. Well, we say that in functional medicine as well. Dr. Patrick Hanaway, functional medicine physician, says functional medicine is like a root cause analysis. So, very proud to be part of this profession of physicians teaching other physicians that dates back from that of Hippocrates. And remember, he said something else. Let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. If any of y'all want information or references, you can feel free to contact me directly on my website, www.paradisesleep.com, or you can email me, Jose the Sleep Guy, that's Jose, Jose the Sleep Guy @gmail.com. Thank you very much for having me, and I hope that y'all have a great evening.
Thank you, Dr. Colon, for another informative presentation. We are currently out of time for questions. Have a wonderful evening.